intelligence services, or is this sort of leak where there were no real red flags in the lead up to it very, very hard to guard against if someone with access just decides to go and do something like this?
Yeah, I think there's an awful lot to be learned here. And no, I'm far from certain that there won't be very substantial on-the-ground bad effects as a result of this leak. We don't know yet because, again, some of these documents were altered. We don't know exactly which were authentic. But look, many of them pertain to the action on the battlefield in Ukraine. And if this has the effect of slowing or stopping our ability to collect intelligence on Russian intentions and actions in Ukraine, this could translate very quickly into more dead Ukrainians, which, considering the effort that the United States and the West generally has made, would be just a catastrophic thing. Not to mention, by the way, we are good at what we do because we share amongst ourselves. The UK, the Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, we share intelligence. And I would certainly forgive our allies right now if they had concerns about our ability to be trusted with their most sensitive information. So again, maybe we'll get lucky and the outcome here will not be as bad as it might be. But the answer nonetheless is that that systems must change, culture must change, and policy must change to stop these leaks from happening.
So implicit in your final comment there, is that to suggest that this could have and should have been avoided, and that the protocols, the intelligence community itself was in the wrong?
I can't answer that definitively because the facts are not all in. It does look very odd that a 21-year-old airman who's been in the service for 2 years, who's sitting in Massachusetts, thousands of miles away from any battlefield, that individual's access to the most classified, and apparently some of this, he had a very high level security clearance. It's hard to believe that he had that most essential of things in terms of granting access, which was a need to know. So I do think we've got a lot of work to do to figure out why in the world he had access. And then even more simplistically, okay, if you can view the documents, that's one thing, but that this individual was able to print them out, fold them up into a pocket and take them out of a secure facility. When that's the fact pattern, there is no question that we can do a lot better.
And what about once this had happened, how quickly, whether this is on the intelligence community or law enforcement, how long it took to even realize it was happening? I mean, we know for a fact that these were leaked and circulated as early as the 1st of March, but probably quite a lot earlier than that. The Defense Secretary was only briefed on the 6th of April. The alleged culprit only tracked down and arrested by the 13th of April. That's pretty slow, isn't it?
You've touched on another very sore topic for those of us charged with doing oversight in the United States Congress. There's two things that are profoundly concerning here. At least two things. Number one, as you point out, with the Pentagon, and this is really more of a Pentagon issue because the individual involved was working for the Air National Guard as opposed to CIA or NSA or any of the intelligence agencies. But they became aware of the leak on April 5th. And according to the charging document, some of this information might have been out in the wild as early as December of 22, maybe January of 2023. So the fact that it could be out there, presumably relatively easy to access, is hugely concerning. And then to your other point, it was not lost on me that the FBI finally raided the quarters of this individual when the New York Times was knocking on the door. So I need to understand, especially since in a situation like this, a guy like Teixeira could be, faxing or sending or photographing and electronically disseminating this information. How in the world did it transpire that the media beat law enforcement to the door of this individual?
Where does the buck stop? With the president?
Well, that there will be plenty of time for that conversation. Our tradition in this country is that the buck stops with the president. But it is also true that the federal government is a massive operation in which this sort of problem should be solved, 12 levels below the level of the President of the United States. And quite frankly, this is not a problem endemic to any particular administration. We've just saw one of the most junior people charged with dissemination and improperly using classified documents. Of course, a few months ago, the former President of the United States was found to have highly classified documents at his home in Florida, as were two former vice presidents. So there's the spectrum for you, from the most junior to the most senior person in the government. We obviously have changes that we need to make.
And just finally, I wanted to come back to a point. You already mentioned it briefly at the top, but I mean, clearly, all of America's allies rely enormously on the might and brilliance of the military and intelligence community. But that said, that comes with responsibility. I mean, do you think there are private conversations going on to apologise? We can't verify this information, of course, but one of the leaks suggests that UK special forces are on the ground in Ukraine. If that's true, or just planting that idea out there is hugely controversial. Do you think there is a need for the president to be apologising to the prime minister? Do you think those sorts of things might be going on in the background secretly?
Well, let me start by saying I would urge caution in assuming that anything that is in these documents are accurate. Even if they're authentic intelligence reporting, having dealt with intelligence reports for well over a decade right now, you can have a report that is offered up with a very low degree of confidence. So I would caution against jumping to conclusions about any given report in this trove. And I know that the Secretary of State has been spending a fair amount of time with our allies reassuring them. But at the end of the day, it's not reassurance or apologies that make the difference and rebuild the trust. It is the list of 2 or 10 or 20 things that the Pentagon and the United States government is going to do to make sure that this never happens again. That's where the rubber meets the road. And those are the conversations that ultimately will restore the trust that needs to be there.
Congressman Hyams, thanks so much.